There are some homes where love is shared equally, and there are some homes where one child grows under sunlight while the other survives in shadows. This is the story of Samantha and Sunitha, twin sisters, born on the same day, raised under the same leaking roof, fed from the same kitchen, but treated like they belonged to two different families. In a struggling town where poverty sat openly on every street corner, lived the Adams family. Their house stood at the edge of a noisy roadside, old zinc roofing, cracked walls, a weak wooden door that never closed properly. At night, when heavy rain fell, balls were placed around the sitting room to catch leaking water. That was how they lived, managing survival one day at a time. The father, Mr. Adams, was once respected in the community. Every morning before sunrise, he tied bundles of newspapers with rope and balanced them on his bicycle. People knew him, children greeted him, shop owners waited for him. For years, he survived by selling information to the world, until the world changed. Phones arrived, internet spread, news became something people read on screens instead of paper, and slowly his customers disappeared, one after another, until one morning there was nobody left waiting for him, no papers to sell, no income to bring home. At first, he tried to stay hopeful. He searched for jobs, visited companies, asked old friends for help, but rejection followed rejection. Eventually, pride gave way to survival. Now, every morning he walked to local printing presses to beg for discarded paper waste, used paper cuttings, rejected newspaper bundles, damaged cartons. He packed them into dirty sacks and sold them to recycling factories that turned them into toilet rolls. A man who once delivered headlines now survived from trash. And every evening when he returned home carrying heavy bags on tired shoulders, he avoided eye contact with neighbors because shame had become part of him. His wife, Mrs. Elfrida Adams, struggled too. She followed catering groups from one event to another, weddings, funerals, church harvests, naming ceremonies, anywhere food was being cooked for crowds. Sometimes she washed pots, sometimes she cut vegetables for hours, sometimes she stood beside hot firewood from morning till midnight. The pay was small, but in that house, every coin mattered. Still, despite their suffering, there was one problem bigger than poverty itself: favoritism. The family had twin daughters, Samantha and Sunitha. Samantha was born first by 7 minutes, but being first never gave her any importance, because from childhood, Sunitha was the daughter their mother loved more. Nobody knew exactly why. Maybe because Sunitha was louder, more playful, more dramatic, or maybe because Samantha reminded her mother too much of struggle and responsibility. But whatever the reason was, everyone in the house could feel it. If new clothes entered the house, Sunitha chose first. If food was not enough, Samantha reduced her portion. If school fees became difficult, Samantha was told to wait while Sunitha's own was settled quickly. Even during birthdays, the difference showed. Sunitha got cakes and pictures. Samantha got responsibilities. Go help your mother in the kitchen. Go wash plates. Go clean the compound. Over time, Samantha stopped expecting fairness. She became quiet, painfully quiet. The kind of quiet that comes when somebody learns their feelings do not matter. Yet, despite everything, Samantha remained focused. She understood one thing very early. Nobody was coming to save her. So she decided to save herself. Every morning, she arranged a small plastic table beside the roadside market. On it sat an old second-hand laptop with missing keys. Beside it was a small printer that made loud grinding noises any time it worked. People came to her for typing jobs, CVs, application letters, photocopies, simple designs, jam printouts, anything computer-related. The money was small, but Samantha handled every customer with patience, even when generators failed, even when rain splashed into her workspace, even when hungry. People respected her because she worked hard, unlike Sunitha. Sunitha loved enjoyment more than stability. She liked attention, fashion, parties, men who bought her cheap gifts and promised fake futures. Her phone never stopped ringing. Different men, different voices, different stories. But none of them truly cared about her. They only enjoyed her presence temporarily. Samantha saw the danger, but any time she tried warning her sister, their mother interfered. "Leave her alone. You are always jealous of your sister. Not everybody wants to suffer like you." Those words cut deep because Samantha was not jealous. She was afraid. Afraid that one day Sunitha's careless lifestyle would bring disaster into the house. Sadly, she was right. One hot afternoon, Samantha sat under a faded umbrella at the roadside stand when a black SUV stopped nearby. A well-dressed young man stepped out, carrying stacks of colorful leaflets. He began sharing them to people nearby. International job opportunity, work abroad, no experience needed. The word spread excitement immediately. People gathered around him. Some grabbed leaflets desperately. Others asked questions. The promise sounded unbelievable. An company overseas recruiting workers, free accommodation, dollar salary, fast processing. For people living in poverty, it sounded like heaven itself had opened. Even Samantha became curious. Not hopeful, just curious. She collected one leaflet and read carefully. There was an office address, phone numbers, pictures of smiling workers wearing helmets and uniforms. Everything looked professional. The young man spoke confidently, too confidently. But Samantha had seen enough scams online to remain careful. So she only asked simple questions. How long is the process? What qualifications are needed? Which country? After listening quietly, she folded the leaflet and placed it inside her work bag. Then she continued typing documents for customers. By evening, she had completely forgotten about it. But that night, something dangerous happened. Mrs. Elfrida entered Samantha's room quietly. This was not unusual. For years, she had searched Samantha's belongings whenever she needed money. Sometimes she took small cash without permission. Other times, she collected Samantha's savings and gave them to Sunitha. And whenever Samantha complained, she was insulted for being selfish. So that night, Mrs. Elfrida searched through Samantha's bag again. And then she saw the leaflet. She paused, read it slowly. Foreign job opportunity, dollar salary, travel abroad, a better future. Her eyes widened and immediately she thought of Sunitha. Not Samantha, never Samantha. In her mind, Samantha was too quiet, too ordinary, too local. But Sunitha? Sunitha was outgoing, beautiful, confident. She will fit into this life better, the mother whispered to herself. Without telling anybody, she took the leaflet. The next morning, she secretly gave it to Sunitha. At first, Sunitha screamed in excitement. Abroad? Mommy, are you serious? For the first time in months, hope entered that house. Mrs. Elfrida became obsessed with the idea. Her daughter traveling overseas, sending dollars home, changing the family's life. She borrowed money from neighbors, sold her jewelry, even pressured Samantha to contribute money without telling her the real reason. Weeks passed quickly. Then one morning before sunrise, Sunitha left the house carrying a small traveling bag. Mrs. Elfrida hugged her tightly. "Don't forget your family when you make it." Sunitha smiled proudly. She believed she was finally escaping poverty, finally becoming somebody important. As the bus disappeared down the road, Mrs. Elfrida cried tears of joy. She had no idea she had just sent her daughter into darkness. At first, communication continued normally. Sunitha called occasionally. She said they were processing documents in the city. She sounded excited. Then suddenly, everything stopped. No calls, no texts. Her phone became unreachable. 1 day passed, then 3, then a week. Fear entered the house slowly. Mrs. Elfrida kept making excuses. Maybe network problem. Maybe they collected their phones. But deep down, she knew something was wrong. Very wrong. Finally, Mr. Adams traveled to the office address written on the leaflet, and what he found destroyed him completely. The office did not exist. The building was abandoned. Neighbors nearby said many desperate young people had come searching recently. All missing, all deceived. The job agency was fake, a trafficking scam, a trap designed to target poor families dreaming of escape. When Mr. Adams heard the truth, his legs failed instantly. Witnesses said he collapsed beside the road like a man whose soul had left his body. Back home, chaos erupted. Mrs. Elfrida finally confessed everything. The leaflet was Samantha's. Samantha never applied. Samantha never even wanted the job. Her mother stole the opportunity secretly and handed it to Sunitha instead. The room fell silent after the confession. Samantha could not speak, not because she was angry, but because deep inside she realized something horrifying. Even her future had never truly belonged to her. Not in that house, not with that mother. Anything good connected to her life could still be taken away and handed to someone else. Days later, Mr. Adams returned home but mentally destroyed. The shock damaged him permanently. He stopped speaking, stopped reacting, stopped recognizing people properly. He sat for hours staring at walls. Sometimes drool rolled down his chin while flies gathered around him. The once proud newspaper vendor became completely dependent on others, and overnight, Samantha became the one carrying the entire family burden alone. Hospital visits, food, bills, rent, everything. Mrs. Elfrida changed too. The woman who once defended Sunitha proudly now moved around like a ghost. Regret consumed her slowly. Every corner of the house reminded her of her daughter. Sunitha's slippers near the door, her old clothes hanging behind the room, her laughter echoing in memory. Sometimes, late at night, neighbors heard Mrs. Elfrida crying and calling her daughter's name into darkness, but no answer ever came. Months later, life continued painfully. Every morning, Samantha still sat beside the roadside with her old laptop, typing documents, printing papers, helping strangers chase opportunities. Cars passed, people rushed around, and life moved on as if nothing happened. But inside Samantha, something had died quietly. Not just trust, not just family love, but the belief that fairness existed in the world. One evening, Rain began falling heavily. Customers disappeared from the roadside. Samantha sat alone beneath her umbrella, watching water splash across the muddy street. Then she noticed something, an old newspaper page blowing across the road. It stopped near her feet. She picked it up slowly, and for a moment she remembered her father, the man who once carried newspapers proudly, the man destroyed by one terrible choice. Tears filled her eyes quietly, because she finally understood something painful about life. Sometimes, destruction does not enter a family through evil strangers. Sometimes, it enters through favoritism, through unfair love, through the dangerous decision to value one child above another. And by the time regret arrives, everything is already ruined. The mother lost the daughter she loved most. The father lost his mind. The family lost peace. And Samantha, the daughter nobody truly chose, was left carrying the weight of everybody's mistakes alone. 3 months after Sunita disappeared, the Adams family stopped looking normal to the outside world. The house that was once noisy with arguments and complaints had become painfully silent. Even the neighborhood changed around them. People no longer stopped by casually. Children no longer played near their compound because everybody knew what had happened, and nobody wanted to speak about it openly. Human trafficking was the kind of tragedy people whispered about quietly, as if saying it too loudly could invite evil into their own homes. Inside the house, suffering had settled permanently. Mr. Adams sat daily beneath the old mango tree outside, staring into space, sometimes holding torn newspaper pages in his hands for hours. His beard had overgrown badly. His clothes smelt of neglect. And occasionally, he whispered Sunita's name softly, like somebody speaking to a ghost. Mrs. Elfreda had become thinner too. Sleep abandoned her completely. Every night, she replayed the same moment in her head. The morning Sunita entered the bus smiling. The final hug, the final wave, the final lie. Because now, she understood something horrifying. She had not sent her daughter abroad for work. She had delivered her directly into the hands of predators. Only Samantha remained functional, but even she was breaking slowly. Every day she worked longer hours beside the roadside, typing CVs, printing visas, helping desperate strangers apply for foreign jobs. And every time someone mentioned travel opportunities, fear gripped her chest immediately. Because now she knew how poverty traps people, not through laziness, but through desperation. One rainy evening, Samantha was shutting down her laptop when somebody approached her table quietly. A young woman, thin, dirty, weak. At first, Samantha barely recognized her, until the woman spoke. Samantha. Her voice trembled, and Samantha froze instantly. Blessing? Blessing had once lived 2 streets away before disappearing nearly a year earlier. People believed she had traveled overseas successfully. Some even envied her family. But now, the girl standing before Samantha looked half dead. Bruises covered her arms, her lips were cracked, and fear lived permanently inside her eyes. Samantha rushed her behind the small roadside shop and bought her food immediately. Blessing ate like somebody escaping starvation. Then slowly, she began talking. And what Samantha heard changed everything. The fake agency was real, but not for jobs, for trafficking. Young people were gathered from different towns and transported secretly across borders. Some were promised hotel work, others nursing jobs, factory jobs, cleaner positions. But once they arrived, their documents were seized, phones taken away, names changed, and then they were sold. Some into forced labor, some into prostitution rings, some simply disappeared forever. Blessing herself had escaped during a police raid in another country. Many others never made it out alive. Samantha's body became cold. Her hands shook violently. Then she asked the question she feared most. "Did you ever see Sunita?" Blessing stopped eating immediately. Silence filled the air, and slowly tears formed in her eyes. Yes, Samantha's heart nearly stopped. She was there. According to Blessing, Sunita arrived with 6 other girls. At first, she remained confident, even playful. She believed the situation would improve eventually. But days became weeks. Then beatings started. Girls who resisted were starved. Some disappeared after being taken away by strange men. Others returned, crying silently. Nobody dared ask questions anymore. And Sunita, the loud, cheerful girl who once loved attention, began to change completely. She cried every night, Blessing whispered. She kept saying she wanted to go home. One night, traffickers forced several girls into vehicles, Sunita among them. Blessing never saw her again after that. Nobody knew whether she was moved elsewhere, sold, or dead. That night, Samantha could not sleep. For the first time since Sunita vanished, there was real information. Painful information, but real. And suddenly, something inside Samantha awakened. Not hope, determination. The next morning, she visited the police station. At first, officers barely listened. Another trafficking case, another missing girl, another poor family. But Samantha refused to leave. She returned daily, brought Blessing as witness, provided the fake leaflets, the phone numbers, descriptions, locations, everything. Eventually, one officer began taking the case seriously. Inspector Karim, a quiet middle-aged investigator known for handling trafficking crimes. And after reviewing everything, his expression darkened immediately because the trafficking network connected to multiple disappearances across different states. Young women, young men, teenagers, all gone. Weeks turned into months as investigations expanded quietly. Several fake recruitment offices were uncovered, drivers arrested, middlemen exposed, but the leaders behind the operation remained hidden, powerful, protected, dangerous. And during this period, Samantha received something unexpected. A phone call, unknown number, unknown country code. At first, there was only breathing. Then suddenly, a weak voice whispered, "Samantha." Her blood froze instantly. "Sunita?" Heavy crying followed. "Bear, I should have listened to you." The line crackled badly. Sunita sounded terrified, broken, different. She was no longer the proud, careless girl who left home dreaming of dollars. This voice belonged to somebody surviving hell. Before Samantha could ask questions, Sunita spoke rapidly. "They move girls every week. Some people die here. Please don't stop looking for me." Then, suddenly, men shouted loudly in the background. Sunita screamed, the phone disconnected, and immediately became unreachable again. That single call shattered the family completely. Mrs. Elfrida collapsed onto the floor screaming uncontrollably. Mr. Adams reacted for the first time in months. He began shaking violently beneath the mango tree, repeating Sunita's name again and again, as though his soul could somehow reach her across the darkness. But Samantha became even stronger, because now she knew one thing clearly: Sunita was still alive. Inspector Karim traced the phone signal to a trafficking route operating near a coastal border region. And finally, after months of secret investigation, a rescue operation was approved. It happened before dawn. Police vehicles moved quietly through isolated warehouses near the coast. Inside were dozens of trafficked victims, some locked inside rooms, some drugged, some too weak to stand. The officers broke doors open one after the other. Chaos exploded everywhere. Traffickers ran, gunshots echoed, victims screamed. And in one dark corner of the warehouse, they found Sunitha, curled against the wall, barefoot, terrified, alive. When Samantha finally saw her sister again at the medical center, she almost didn't recognize her. The once vibrant girl now looked painfully fragile. Her body carried scars. Her eyes carried worse ones. Sunitha burst into tears immediately. "I'm sorry," over and over again. "I'm sorry." Because in that terrible place, she had finally understood everything Samantha had tried to warn her about years earlier. Returning home did not magically heal the family. Some wounds never heal completely. Sunitha struggled with nightmares. Sometimes she screamed during sleep. Sometimes she refused to leave the room for days. Crowded places terrified her. Unknown men terrified her more. Mrs. Elfrida could barely look at her daughter without crying. The guilt consumed her daily. Because the damage done to Sunitha could never truly be undone. Never. But slowly, something unexpected began happening inside that broken house. For the first time in their lives, the twins became close, really close, not as rivals, not as competitors for love, but as survivors. Samantha helped Sunitha recover patiently, fed her, comforted her during panic attacks, sat beside her during sleepless nights. And Sunitha finally saw the sister she had ignored for years, the sister who had always protected her quietly, even when nobody protected her in return. Months later, Samantha and Sunitha started working beside the roadside stand, but now their mission had changed. They no longer only typed CVs, they warned people too, especially young girls, especially desperate families. Whenever flashy recruiters appeared promising unrealistic jobs abroad, Samantha confronted them publicly, and Sunitha stood beside her, living proof of what trafficking truly looked like behind the fake promises. One afternoon, a young girl approached their stand holding a colorful leaflet, excited, hopeful, exactly the way Sunitha once looked. But before the girl could speak, Sunitha gently collected the paper from her hands, then quietly said, "Sometimes the opportunity that looks like salvation is actually the beginning of destruction." The girl listened carefully and slowly folded the leaflet away. That evening, heavy rain began falling again over the Adams family house. Water still leaked through the roof. The walls were still cracked. Poverty had not disappeared, but something inside the house had changed. Truth had entered. Regret had entered. And finally, love had entered equally too. Because sometimes, family destruction begins with favoritism, but healing begins when people finally learn the value of the child they ignored for too long. 1 year after the rescue operation, the Adams family no longer looked like the same people tragedy had destroyed. The pain was still there. Some scars never disappear completely. But for the first time in many years, hope had returned to the house. Real hope. Not the fake promises printed on trafficking leaflets. Not the dangerous dreams sold to desperate people. But hope built slowly through hard work, through healing, and through second chances. Everything began quietly one evening. Samantha was working on a customer's CV beside the roadside when a young university student stopped at her table. He watched her type quickly on the old laptop. Then he asked casually, "Why don't you learn website design?" Samantha laughed softly. "With this old laptop." But the student smiled. "You already know computers better than most people. Just learn one more skill." Before leaving, he wrote the name of a free online training platform on a small piece of paper. That tiny moment changed everything. That night, Samantha could not sleep. She kept staring at the paper. Website design, artificial intelligence, digital skills, the future. For years, survival had consumed her life so completely that she never imagined anything beyond roadside typing work. But suddenly, for the first time, she imagined more. The next morning, she surprised everyone, especially Sunitha. "I want us to learn together," she said. Sunitha stared at her in shock. "Together?" Samantha nodded. Yes. There was no jealousy anymore, no competition, no favoritism standing between them. Only two sisters trying to rebuild what life had broken. And slowly, Sunitha smiled. "For once," she whispered, "let's do something good together." The journey was not easy. For 6 straight months, the twins became obsessed with learning. Every morning they worked at the roadside stand. Every night they studied website design, graphic design, AI tools, content creation, online branding, digital marketing, basic programming. Sometimes electricity failed halfway through lessons. Sometimes internet subscriptions expired unexpectedly. Sometimes exhaustion nearly defeated them. But they refused to stop. Mr. Adams slowly became involved too. One evening, he sat quietly behind them watching a tutorial video about online publishing. Then, suddenly, he spoke after months of emotional silence. "I studied mass communication for a reason." Everybody froze because it was the longest sentence he had spoken properly in nearly 2 years. Tears filled Mrs. Elfrida's eyes instantly. Mr. Adams pointed weakly at the laptop screen. "News is online now. Printing is digital. People still need information." That night, something awakened inside him again. Purpose. Little by little, the broken family started rebuilding itself together. Sunitha handled social media pages. Samantha focused on design and AI tools. Mr. Adams learned digital publishing and printing systems. And surprisingly, Mrs. Elfrida became the biggest supporter of all. Every night, she stayed awake cooking food for them while they studied. Sometimes, she simply stood quietly at the doorway watching Samantha work, watching the daughter she once ignored becoming the foundation of the family. And guilt crushed her more each day. 6 months later, everything changed. The old roadside umbrella disappeared completely. The cracked plastic table vanished too. In its place stood a modest computer training center in the heart of a growing town in eastern Nigeria. Bright signboard, glass entrance door, stable electricity, rows of desktop computers, a small printing section, internet service, air conditioners humming softly, and boldly written across the signboard, Adams Digital Hub and AI Training Center. At first, only a few students came, mostly secondary school graduates preparing for exams, O-level students, JAM candidates, young people desperate to understand computers and artificial intelligence. But Samantha and Sunitha taught with passion because they understood struggle personally. They taught students how to use AI tools responsibly, how to design websites, how to type professionally, how to avoid online scams, how to identify fake job recruiters, how to build opportunities from knowledge instead of desperation. And slowly, their reputation spread across the town. Within months, the center became one of the most respected youth training hubs in the area. Parents trusted them, students admired them. Even local schools started partnering with them for computer literacy programs. Some students who trained there later got remote jobs online. Others built businesses. Others became teachers themselves. And for the first time in his life again, Mr. Adams walked proudly through town, not carrying waste paper, but carrying printed project materials designed inside the family business. People greeted him respectfully again, and this time he smiled back. Meanwhile, Mrs. Elfrida opened a small eatery near the training center. At first, it sold only rice and soup for students, but her cooking quickly became popular throughout the neighborhood. Workers, drivers, students, business owners, everybody came there to eat. The woman who once destroyed her family through favoritism was now feeding people daily with humility and gratitude. Eventually, the family moved into a beautiful apartment in the center of town. Not a mansion, but peaceful, clean, safe. The leaking roof was gone, no more bowls collecting rainwater at night, no more cracked walls filled with shame. And on the sitting room wall hung the family's first proper portrait together, smiling, united, whole again. But the most emotional moment came one Sunday evening after dinner. The lights suddenly went out briefly, and in the darkness, Mrs. Elfrida began crying quietly. When electricity returned moments later, everybody saw tears rolling down her face. She stood slowly and walked towards Samantha. For years, she had defended Sunitha openly while ignoring Samantha's pain completely. But now, the weight of those memories became unbearable. Then, finally, she spoke the words Samantha had waited her entire life to hear. "I am sorry." The room became silent instantly. Mrs. Elfrida held Samantha's hands tightly while crying uncontrollably. "I failed you as a mother. I made you feel unwanted. I punished you for being responsible, and I nearly destroyed this family because I loved wrongly." Samantha burst into tears immediately. Years of buried pain broke open at once. And then Sunitha walked forward too. She hugged her sister tightly. "I am sorry too. I enjoyed the favoritism because it benefited me, but I never realized how much it hurt you." The twins cried together for a long time that night, not from pain anymore, but from healing. Months later, a journalist heard about their story. At first, the family hesitated, but eventually they agreed to speak publicly, and soon their story spread everywhere. Television interviews, online blogs, radio programs, social media. People across the country became inspired by their transformation, from trafficking tragedy to family restoration, from roadside struggle to digital success. During one emotional interview, Mrs. Elfrida spoke directly to parents watching nationwide. Her voice trembled with regret as cameras rolled. Favoritism is dangerous. It may look small inside the home, but it creates invisible wounds. Children remember the love they were denied, sometimes for the rest of their lives. Then she paused emotionally before adding, "And even if one child appears easier to love, a parent must never make another child feel less valuable. Because, according to her, that hidden pain can destroy an entire family silently." The interview touched millions. Parents began discussing favoritism openly online, teachers shared the story with students, churches invited the Addams family to speak to young people about trafficking awareness, technology, and family healing. And everywhere they went, people listened carefully. Because their pain was real, their scars were real, and their victory was real too. One evening, after closing the training center, Samantha and Sunitha stood outside watching students leave excitedly with laptops and notebooks. The street glowed beautifully beneath orange sunset light. Then Sunitha smiled softly. "Can you believe this used to be just one broken laptop beside the roadside?" Samantha laughed gently. "And one noisy printer." They both smiled, because now they understood something life had tried desperately to teach them from the beginning. A painful past does not have to become a permanent future. Families can heal, people can change, and sometimes the same life that nearly destroys somebody can later become the reason others survive. Inside the office, Mr. Adams adjusted freshly printed training manuals proudly. In the eatery nearby, Mrs. Elfrida served hot food while laughing with customers. And outside, underneath the evening sky, the twin sisters who once stood on opposite sides of love finally stood side by side, together, as family.
Moral lessons from the story. 1.
Greed can destroy a family. The mother's selfish decision to steal one daughter's opportunity and secretly replace her with the other led to pain, guilt, and destruction for everyone involved. 2. Parents must never choose favorites among their children. Unequal love and unfair treatment create deep emotional wounds that can last forever. 3. Desperation can make people vulnerable to trafficking. Many victims are trapped because they are searching for jobs, better lives, or ways to support their families. 4. Not every job abroad offer is genuine. People should carefully verify recruitment agencies and suspicious travel offers before trusting strangers. 5. Silence and secrecy often protect evil. The traffickers succeeded because lies were hidden and difficult truths were ignored. 6. Guilt cannot erase the consequences of bad decisions. By the time the mother realized her mistake, the damage had already changed the family forever. 7. True love sacrifices, it does not exploit. Samantha continued helping her broken family despite the betrayal she suffered, showing strength and compassion. 8. Mental and emotional pain can destroy a person slowly. The father's collapse into silence and hopelessness shows how trauma affects entire families, not only direct victims. 9. Communities should pay attention when something feels wrong. The neighbor's suspicions and gossip reflect how communities sometimes notice danger before families do. 10. Human trafficking is a real and dangerous problem. The story highlights how vulnerable people, especially young women seeking work, can be manipulated and exploited. 11. Honesty could have prevented tragedy. If the family had communicated openly instead of hiding the truth, many painful events might never have happened. 12. Strength is revealed during suffering. Samantha's resilience, kindness, and endurance show that even in painful situations, a person can still choose humanity over bitterness. 13. Every decision has consequences. One dishonest action created a chain reaction that affected multiple lives across all three parts of the story. 14. Hope should never blind people to danger. Dreams of a better future are important, but blind trust without caution can lead people into harmful situations. 15. Forgiveness is difficult, but hatred destroys even more. The story suggests that carrying bitterness forever can continue the cycle of pain, while forgiveness may begin healing. If you watched to this point, you are the real MVP. God bless you as you subscribe. Thank you.